Hi, in this playlist we're going to be looking at solving quadratic inequalities. This is aimed at round about grade 8 GCSE maths. They are a little bit more challenging, but once you get the hang of it, particularly factorising, then hopefully it'll be okay for you. However, please, as always, please do stop the video, have a go at the question, and then compare your solution. If you're not sure about anything, always add a comment. I'll come back to you, and I look forward to seeing you inside the video. Hi, in this video we're going to be looking at something called quadratic inequalities. So this is aimed at round about grade 8 of GCSE. It's not too bad. Once you get used to it, you should be okay with it. And really the key skill with this is being able to factorise these equations as we work through, and some of them will fairly easily factorise, some of them we might need to use a quadratic formula or completing the square or something like that, but we'll work through them and see where we end up. Okay, so let's have a look at x squared minus x minus 20. Well, what we're looking at then is minus 20 and two numbers that when we multiply them together make minus 20, and when we add them together make minus x, or if you like, minus 1. Okay, well those two numbers are going to be minus 5 and plus 4. So if I now write this out as two bracketed terms, I've got x minus 5 multiplied by x plus 4 is greater than 0. Okay, so what we're saying with that is this particular quadratic equation crosses y at x equals 5 and x equals 4. Okay, now if you're not sure about how I've come to that, then please do have a look at some of the videos and playlists on solving quadratic equations. But what we're basically saying is that when x minus 5, we kind of ignore that, when x minus 5 is greater than 0 or equal to 0, then x must equal 5. And when x plus 4 is equal to 0, then x must equal, I beg your pardon, minus 4. Okay, so if I now put that onto a sketch, and I would always advocate using a sketch for these sorts of things, what we're going to end up with is a nice kind of quadratic equation where we've got 5 and minus 4, and it's going to be this kind of curve that'll go something like that. All right, well, what we're saying is the values that satisfy the equation are greater than 0. So basically, it's any value that is above this x-axis. Okay, so therefore we can say that the values that satisfy are when x is greater than 5, so it's these values over here, all these values are greater than 5, and these values here, okay, which are less than minus 4. And that would be the answer to this particular inequality. Okay, so that's the general idea, and I'm going to do a very similar one with the next question. Okay, so let's move on then to question number 2. It says, work out the integer values that satisfy this one. So again, we're going to use the same idea that we're going to factorize it. We're going to say we need two numbers to make minus 35, that when we add them together they make plus 2x, and when they multiply together make minus 35. Well, that's going to be plus 7 and minus 5. So I can write this inequality as x plus 7 multiplied by x minus 5, in this particular case, is less than 0. Okay, so again we're saying that it crosses y at x equals minus 7 and x equals positive 5. So again, I'm just going to draw a little sketch just to kind of illustrate that. I kind of like drawing these sketches. It sort of works for me, and it just helps me to get a good idea of what it is I'm trying to show. So this is going to be 5. This is going to be -7. And again, I got a nice smooth curve. Now, in this particular one, the values of the integers are less than 0. Okay, so before they were greater than 0, this one they are less than 0. So it's going to be these values along here. Okay, so the value of x, if you can imagine, they're going to be kind of this side is going to be less than 5 or greater than -7. Okay, and that will answer this particular question. Now, one of the things I do sometimes see, and I think it's okay, it's perhaps just a little bit confusing, is that people will write this. They'll put x in the middle and they'll say, well, x is greater than -7 and x is less than 5. Okay, that's exactly right. It doesn't really matter. I haven't ever seen a mark scheme that kind of asks you specifically to write it like that. It doesn't really matter, but it is something that certainly some teachers or some examination boards might prefer for you to do, so you can write it whichever way that suits you. Okay, so let's have a look at number 3 then. Work out the integer values that satisfy this particular quadratic inequality. Now, it's just a little bit trickier because effectively what we've got there is going to be something that we just need to make right. Okay, so what I would be doing is I'd be saying, well, okay, in that case, let's expand it. So x is greater. 4 times 8 is 32, and 4 times -x is -4x. Okay, so we're in a position now where we can kind of just manipulate this and make it greater than 0 and then be able to solve our equations. So I'm going to rewrite this now as x squared plus 4x minus 32 is greater than 0. Okay. Hopefully that's all right with you. What I've done is I've brought this 32 over to the other side by minusing it. So minus 32 both sides means I lose that one and I get x squared minus 32. And then add 4x to both sides. I lose this side and this side becomes plus 4x. Okay, so now I want two numbers that when I multiply them together make minus 32. And when I add them together make plus 4. Okay, well, the two numbers I'm going to have are going to be -8 and plus 4 itself. Okay, so -8 plus 4, when I add them together, I beg your pardon, it's going to be +8 and -4. I'm so sorry, +8 and -4. Okay, so +8 minus 4 is going to give me +4, and +8 times -4 is going to give me -32. So I can write that as x plus 8 multiplied by x minus 4 is greater than 0. Okay, so again, as we've done before, crosses y at. Okay, I kind of like doing it like this. X equals -8. And x equals 4. So let's again have a look at another little sketch. Okay, this is 4. This down here is going to be -8, and I've got this little sketch like that. Okay, and what we're saying is the values that satisfy the inequality are greater than. Okay, so it's above the 0 line or the x-axis, so they're all those values and all those values. Okay, so what we're saying is the inequality that satisfies are the values where x is less than -8, so it's values going in this direction, -9, -10 and so on, and values going in the other direction, or x is greater than 4, and that would be the answer to this particular question. Okay, I hope that's all right for you. Let's move on to question number 4. I think I'm going to make this one whole video just because it will, I think, finish everything off. And number 4 is okay. Number 5 will be fairly straightforward for you. So we might as well carry on. However, please do stop the video, have a go at the question, and then compare your solution. It says, work out the integer values that satisfy 2x squared, I'm sorry about my printer there, minus 10x plus 10 is less than 0. Okay, so the key issue with this is to recognize that actually all of those coefficients we can divide through by 2. So I can kind of write that now as x squared minus 5x plus 5 is less than 0. Okay, and then it's really just a case of recognizing how we can factorize that. Now, you could use completing the square if you wanted to. I tend to shy away from it a bit where you've got, an odd number, you're going to divide it by 2. So in this particular case, I'm going to recognize that I'm going to use the quadratic formula. It's just kind of easier. This would be a calculator type question. So what we can say is that a equals 1, in other words, the coefficient of x squared is 1. B equals minus 5 and C equals positive 5. And then, as I would always suggest to you, try to get into the habit of writing the quadratic formula. X equals minus b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now, I know some people who are doing, say, international GCSE, you've already got this and it's at the front of your exam paper. However, I just think it's useful to do this. It kind of gets you in that frame of mind of putting these numbers in. So the way that's useful is to use brackets for each of the numbers. Now, the reason that is because you've got to remember that this is minus 5 squared, not 5 squared with a minus at the front of it. So we've got to be a little bit careful with some of these, just to make sure that we're using exactly the right calculation. Unfortunately, the calculator is not going to do it for you. What you need to do is work out this discriminant, this area under the square root, okay, and then calculate at the very end. So you'll see what I mean. So I've got minus 5 is going to be plus 5, plus or minus the square root. Okay, so minus 5 squared is 25. Okay, if you need to be very careful with your calculator. You need to use brackets for that. So I've got 25, and then I've got minus 4 times 1 is 4, and 4 times 5 is 20. So I've got 25 minus 20. So it's going to be square root of 5, all divided by 2. So now I've got two values of x. I've got one value worth 5 plus the square root of 5 over 2. Okay, and 1 of 5 minus the square root of 5 over 2. Okay, so therefore I've got x equals 3.62, and that's 2 decimal places, and x equals 1.38, again to 2 decimal places. Okay, now remember again, that's where it crosses the x-axis. Okay, so let's have a look. If I did a little sketch of that, I'm just going to do it over here. I've got 3.62, and I've got 1.38, and I've got this, again, nice curve that goes like that. Now, remember, the question is they're looking for the integer values, the whole number values. Now, the value is going to be less than 0. So it's these values in here. Okay, but they are the whole numbers. So basically the whole numbers are going to be 2 and 3. Okay, those are the only two integer values that will satisfy this particular inequality. So if I just sort of write it in here, the integer values are 2 and 3. And that would be the answer to that particular question. So just be a little bit careful when you're working this out, just to kind of go back to the question and make sure you're doing exactly the right thing. Okay, let's go to the final question, which isn't too long. Okay, you might recognize it, that it's the difference of two squares. So rather than writing x squared minus 64, if I factorize that, I can write that as x minus 8 multiplied by x plus 8, and that's greater than 0. Okay, so again, as we've done before, it crosses y at x equals 8 and x equals minus 8. Okay, if I drew a little sketch, I've got minus 8, I've got plus 8, it's going to come something like that. Okay, the values of x are greater than 0, so it's going to be any of these values here. Okay, so therefore the inequality is going to be, I wonder if I can get that out of the video, that doorbell, I don't know. Okay, the values of x are less than minus 8, or x is greater than 8. Okay, I hope that's been useful to you. I'm going to get to the doorbell. I'll look forward to seeing you inside the next video.